It's hello. How are you?
Hello, hello.
Hey, Les.
How's everything going?
It's
It's
going.
alive and well in Houston, Texas.
I tell you, it's a plum pleasing pleasure, as well as a privilege to be in the presence of greatness in the two of you.
That's great.
Likewise, likewise.
Yes, this is an unusual time for me because I'm in the house by myself
Oh,
and
wow.
don't have my technical people with me, trying to figure things out myself
We've been
every
there.
day. Yeah, my goal is to go to bed learning something that I did not know the day before.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
beautiful.
yes, and so the I'd like to for everyone that's listening right now that there's a book that I'm encouraging you to get. Now, I want to pronounce your last name correctly.
Sure.
Rasmus?
Rasmus.
Rasmus. All
Correct.
right. Where'd you get that from, Pastor Rasmus,
I
sir?
got it from my husband.
I know I'm talking to him. Where'd you
Yeah,
get that
man.
from?
It's Rasmus is a common first name in the Dutch language. So there are a lot of Rasmus is like John in Dutch. So the West Indies, my family must have migrated through the Dutch West Indies to the U.S. at some point. But any Rasmus you meet, except for maybe one baseball player that played in Houston, uh, are related to me. We are a unique group, man. As a matter of fact, some of the history says my forefathers and mothers chose that name for themselves, so it wasn't a slave
Mm.
name that they took on.
So your full name is
Rudolph Rasmus, and my friends call me Rudy.
okay. All right. Now, first of all, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and giving me the opportunity to interview you. But I also want to just make it clear I'm a fan of the two of you. Let the record show.
I appreciate it.
And this book, Learning to Be, and I love the subtitle, Finding Your Center After the Bottom Falls Out.
Yeah,
Mm, the bottom has fallen out.
exactly.
When were you inspired to write this book?
Well, I was actually inspired to write it about 20 years ago. And a number of things occurred. I've said to people, I've written this book 3 times. The first time was immediately or shortly after I experienced what my psychiatrist called a major depressive episode. My grandmother wouldn't have known nothing about that term, and she would have just said, baby, you had a nervous breakdown.
Yes.
The second time I wrote the book was about 10 years ago. I thought, well, maybe if I got a ghostwriter to help me write it, it would come together with, better finesse, more ease, all that kind of stuff. That didn't work. About 3 years ago, I went to go stay with my daughter and my son-in-law as they had our very first grandchild. And my husband and I had committed that I would stay with them for 6 months because they didn't have any childcare where they live. And so in that time, the Spirit said to me very clearly, you're here for 2 things, to take care of your grandson and to write your book. And so it came out 3 years ago. It was written 3 years ago, and it came out this past September.
Well, I went through that, but it took me much longer with my book. You've got to be hungry, the power within to win. And it took me a long time to get it out, but I finally got it out.
Yes.
I love finding your center after the bottom falls out, learning to be. Let's talk about that. When you talk about learning to be, how do you define that?
Well, we live in a society, especially in the West, where we are identified, we're measured, we're determined as to who we are based on what we do. And so most of us have forgotten that we are human beings. We're spiritual persons having a human experience. And so what we end up doing is investing a lot of energy, a lot of push energy, a lot of strive energy in creating an identity that's often based in a sense of feeling that we're worthy, that we're enough, that we have enough. And so often that kind of energy just really doesn't last. And so for me, my identity fell apart at that point. And the Spirit said, okay, so who are you? Who are you really? Besides the roles and the titles and the responsibilities that you have, who are you? And so that began my journey of finding out who I really was and coming to find out that I was so much more than just my ability to do, that my very existence was formulated out of the mind of God. And that if I was created in the image of God, then I needed to get back to that place where I knew exactly who I was in God as a co-creator, as a manifester, as one who was able to use words and create a world just as the great divine had done. And so it was getting back to who I was centrally and most importantly. And then from there, any doing comes out of my being grounded in my being.
Yes. How has that affected you, sir?
Well, when you live with the being expert, man, let me tell you, and I'm a doer instinctively. So what I've been as a student, Les, I have learned some of the best stuff I've learned in my life. I've learned from my wife. I didn't come to the marriage 35 years ago as a believer in anything other than currency. I ultimately came to encounter a power greater than me that restored me to sanity and ultimately gave me a heart of service. I could only have learned that had I spent this time with Juanita.
So you became very spiritual when you saw her and said, "The Lord is my shepherd. I see what I want."
You know the story so well.
I tell you, man, I saw her and almost became a believer immediately.
Yeah.
God is good. That's all I can say. God is good.
Let the record show.
Right.
The bottom has fallen out for millions of people around the world.
Absolutely.
And it's still falling out. Over 47 million people will lose their jobs because of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
The divorce rate has increased 40%. And there are businesses that are going under because of the coronavirus. And so he said, finding your center. How do you, when you're in the midst of the storm, things have happened to you and still going on, and things are happening to people that you care about. We have not gotten our minds around the coronavirus, and already they're saying there's another version that's coming.
Yeah.
And then I heard there's a second version that's coming that's more lethal and is easier to spread. How do you find your center in that kind of environment?
Well, the reality is that for me, the environment was a mental health crisis. But for some, it's a divorce. For some, indeed, it is losing a job. For others, it might be a dream that seems to be deferred or denied. There are all those different dynamics that we're experiencing because of COVID-19. We each have our own kind of bottom, right? Mm-hmm. But what we recognize and what I was able to capture in learning to be at the end of every chapter, I offer a practice. And these practices are all about grounding our spiritual nature, however you choose to name that nature, however you choose to name the power that breathes in you. I call that power God. That power has tools that if we'll connect with those tools, these supernatural and divine tools, we can find ourselves grounded no matter what the circumstance is around us. Now, here's one of the things that I learned. I learned that so often we're busy trying to escape the devastation, the diagnosis, the disease, the depression, the divorce, or whatever the crisis might be. In reality, they are often our teacher. what Spirit led me to do in the midst of my own crash was to stop and say, why are you here, depression? And what am I to learn from you? Because out of every, I think it was Earl Nightingale that says that every negative thing has an equal, if not greater, seed of goodness, of greatness in it. But most of us run from the problem, just trying to escape it, get it behind us, move on, get past it. And our treasure is often in the darkness. Think about it. Oil comes out of the darkness of the earth. Diamonds come out of the darkness of the belly of the earth. Pearls come out of the darkness of an irritated clam who allows a bit of sand to be rubbed into a fine and pristine, beautiful treasure of a pearl, right? And so each of us has that same quality and capacity to stop and notice what we're noticing about what it is that is the hidden treasure in the midst of what seems to be the most devastating moment of our life, the place where the rug gets pulled from under our feet, the place indeed where the bottom falls out.
How did you and your husband meet?
We met at one of the best funerals I have ever attended in my whole life. 1982, 83, I attended a funeral. Juanita happened to attended the same funeral. I remember looking over my right shoulder, Les. I looked over my right shoulder and I saw this bright light. I don't know what was happening in that moment in the church. I know it was a casket in the front, but there was a bright light in the back. I'm telling you, from that moment, man, I remember saying, okay, after this funeral, I'm gonna make sure I meet this young woman. And I introduced myself. Well, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, do you know who that is? And she told me that was Silver's Juanita's aunt, Silver's niece. And I said, well, can you point Silver to me? And I went over and introduced myself to Silver. And I met Silver. I said, Miss Silver, could you introduce me to your niece? Well, she said that here's her mother right here. And her mother introduced me to her mother. And then her mother introduced me to her. And I remember stepping over some we went over to the grave site. And I remember stepping over these grave markers. And while we were walking towards the burial site, I remember her trying to get an appointment to sell me some insurance. You know,
I was in the insurance business.
She was in
financial products.
So she was trying to get an appointment, Les. I was trying to get a date. I got the date. She got the appointment. I bought the policy. All right. I bought that policy. And guess who the beneficiary was on that first policy after we got married? Guess who became the beneficiary?
She was.
That's
Oh, my
right.
goodness. Go to sleep with one eye open. Let me ask you.
Well, the good news, he's never had to sleep with one eye open. He's
right.
always been able to sleep quite well.
But it was
Okay, that is great. When you think about where people are right now, how do they find their center? What is it they have to do to tune out? I said that most people are depressed or having nervous breakdowns or going through a tough time because they are victims of what I call mass distractions. So how do you tune out? How do you find your center when everywhere you look, we're talking about you can die by breathing the wrong air from someone.
Sure.
And so the nervousness and the stress and the tension that comes with that, we're in a place where we have never been before.
Yeah,
Never.
that's right.
So keeping social distancing, I was at Emory Hospital and I got on the elevator and they only let 4 people on at a time. So I was the 4th person and there was a guy, he was on there with me. 2 people got off and he got ready to sneeze and took his mask off.
No.
And he sneezed. Look here. I looked at him. I said, you know what? I said, I'm about to whoop your behind up in here. If you don't put that mask back on,
Yeah,
make me lose my mind up in here, up in here. So people are nervous and fearful. I'm in the house. I said, I'm not coming out till 2021.
and here we are, 2021.
Yeah.
Yes. But now I'm talking about 2027. I'm just joking. I've been talking to squirrels. I got a squirrel friend named Tyrone. He's outside the window saying, keep on asking more questions. I like that book myself. But I want to ask you now, did you have this flowing beard at the time when you all met?
You know what? I didn't. The beard's been with me about 20 years now, maybe a few years more. But I was on the beach one summer. I remember looking at some ladies braiding some little girl's hair. I had a long beard at the time. I asked them to braid this beard. I wore this beard across the beach. I remember terrifying people. I said, you know what? This beard works. I got on the plane. I wore it all the way home. People were kind of scooting back. And you know, the one thing this beard has become less, it's become a filter, filter. And what it really does is helps me to detect judgmental people at a safe distance, man.
Wow.
You look at this beard, I can tell the way somebody's looking at me. Sometimes they never ever confuse me with being a pastor ever. All right. It's a great decoy, man.
All right. Now, so what are the takeaways? What's the process? Pastor Ray, am I not pronouncing it right? Rasmus?
Rasmus. Mm-hmm.
What's the process of finding your center?
Well, there are a number of things. And so in learning to be, what I do is at the end of each chapter, I tell a little bit of my story, and then I give a practice that I invite people to engage in. And so one of those practices is to take a deep breath. You mentioned it. We're all distracted. So much is pulling at our attention. And so I do some breathing practices. Let's do one now. I invite you to sit up tall and straight in your seat. And if you're able to put your feet flat on the floor, turn your hands palm side up and rest them on your thighs. And then breathe in deeply and fully through your nose. And then exhale through your mouth as though you're blowing through a straw. And so we continue to breathe in deeply and fully through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. And if you'll do that for a few minutes, you'll begin to find that your autonomic nervous system will begin to calm down. We are very overstimulated people. We have so much negativity coming towards us. We have so much bad news, so much low frequency energy coming at us that we have to take a moment and stop, notice what we're noticing. And our breathing can help us to reorganize ourselves into a center, into a grounded place again. And so that's one of the techniques we use. There are a number. One of the other meditations that I use is an evening meditation called the Examen, Examen. It was established by St. Ignatius of Loyola in the 13th century, where he taught his monks who had to work as well as inside the monastery. They had to hold jobs outside of the monastery. And so he told them, look, when you get up in the morning, if you can't do mass, if you can't do the praying of the hours, then at least do the Examen. And the Examen works like this. At the end of the evening, before you go to bed, I suggest you don't sit on the bed and do this. You might get a little sleepy. So sit in a chair in your room, right? You take some deep breaths, and then you ask Spirit to take you back through your day, help you to see what in your day was life-giving, what in your day gave you joy or peace or made you feel good. Notice what was life-giving, right? Then give God thanks for it. Gratitude, as you know, changes our attitude. And so in that space of gratitude of saying, God, thank you for letting me see how nice it was that Rudy brought me fresh flowers today. Thank you for that. Thank you for the compliment I got. Thank you for that conversation that went so well when I had been concerned about it. You give God thanks for all that you see that was life-giving. Then secondly, you ask Spirit to take you through the day. Where is it that you were constricted? Where is it that you didn't feel you were receiving or maybe giving love well? Where is it that you felt that the life got sucked out of you from a conversation? Where is it that you didn't feel your needs being met in the course of the day? How is it that life got taken from you in some way? And then you notice those, and then you give God thanks for those as well. Why? Thanking God for allowing you to see it. I think so many of us suffer because we don't take the time to notice what we're noticing and give it the time and attention, the divine insight that's needed. So after you take a look at what didn't give you life and you give God thanks for it, the third thing you do is you do more of what gave you life and less of what took life from you. And that's the practice of the examine. Those are just two of the 13 or so different practices that we include in Learning to Be that are empowering people to make the shift, empowering people to be with all this disorientation, this disruption that we're all experiencing. The practices that I use in Learning to Be are all very simple, and they're designed to help ground us into a new orientation, into a new way of being, no matter what the circumstances, situations, or conditions may be.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Juanita Campbell Rasmus.
You got it!
Okay, Juanita Campbell Rasmus and our wonderful husband, Rudy. And it's called Learning to Be, Finding Your Center After the Bottom Falls Out. It's a book that was written for this point in time. It will help you to ground yourself. It will help you to go within, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things, peace of mind, calm, joy, all these things will be added unto you. And so this book is something that everyone could use this book right now, more so than ever before. It's right here by my nightstand. I read it at night, going through it for the third time. I want to ask you, when you had the idea and the concept for it, did you envision people being able to grasp what you meant by when the bottom falls out? Because I think that the coronavirus came so fast. It's like the bottom falling out, and people clamming and reaching for something that can give them a sense of well-being, a sense of I don't feel safe right now and I need some help.
Right, right. Well, when we wrote the book, the title that I had, when you are working with a publisher, one of the things I was told, and this is my first book, is that you have to hold everything loosely, particularly titles, right? Because the process of a publisher working with an author is kind of like an adoption. You're giving them your baby book, and then they can name it whatever they want. Well, the working title had been Learning to Be in a Doo-Doo World. You can take that doo-doo any way you want to, because sometimes life is just pure flat manure, right?
Yes.
So they wanted to finesse it a bit, and so then they said,
Yes.
Learning to Be, Finding Your Center After the Bottom Falls Out. Now keep in mind, the title came about 2 years ago. So this was long before COVID-19.
Yes.
But what we recognize is that when the divine is wanting to get a message out, it will be well timed. And I'm so grateful that Learning to Be has been so very well timed.
All things work together for good for those who love God and for those who are called according to his purpose. And you
Indeed.
and your husband most certainly are called. This is a very powerful book. I encourage everybody they can get it at Amazon. Am I correct?
Absolutely. They can get it anywhere books are sold. And if your bookstore doesn't have it, ask them, they'll order it. Or you can go to my website, JuanitaRasmus.com, and you can connect there to InterVarsity Press, who's the publisher, or Amazon, or whatever you need. It's available readily.
Okay. Learning to Be. It's a powerful book, ladies and gentlemen. And I just encourage you to get it. I find it it brings me a lot of peace, and it helps me to connect with myself. Sometimes we get so busy taking care of others,
Yes.
don't take care of ourselves. Something that Ian Levant said, and I love it. She said, "Give to yourself until your cup runneth over,
Yeah.
and then give to others from the overflow."
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm. What are the three main things that you'd like for people to walk away with and sink their teeth into at the completion of the book? You've got some exercises and things that they could practice to get in the mindset of going within. If there were three things that you would crystallize your thoughts around that you want them to have, what would they be?
Well, I think one of them would be this. Number one, to breathe. I talk about breathing practices because the good news is that wherever you go, your breath is there, right? And
Yeah.
especially in COVID-19, something that's almost calling us to hold our breath. We don't want to breathe around others. Practice deep breathing, breathing down in the gut deeply and fully, exhaling slowly and deeply, because that way, again, we calm our fight, flight, and freeze symptoms of the autonomic nervous system, right? So breathing and that simplicity of that technique would be one. I think the second thing is this, that to ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I really? One of the key things that happened for me between working with my psychiatrist and a psychotherapist and the great psychotherapist, the divine psychotherapist, the question that came up for me was, who am I? Who am I now? Who am I as I live with this diagnosis? Who am I for those who might be experiencing divorce? Who am I now? Who am I after the children have all grown and gone? Who am I now that I'm retired? That question, who am I, has the capacity for us to begin to open and be more expansive about our possibilities, about who we can become. And then the third thing I would say is to ask yourself, what do you love? I put it this way in the book. What do I want? What do I need? And what gives me life at my very core? One of the things I came to realize is that I had so often, in my desire to meet my other people's needs, my family's needs, the needs of my congregation as I serve as a pastor, the needs of I call my family of origin, my parents and my sister, and those needs that are so present, is that sometimes we put what we love on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, nobody ever says to you, now it's your time. Today's your day.
Mm-hmm.
New mercies have been given to you. What would you love? And what I've come to realize is that when I'm engaging in the things that I really love, it makes all the relationships around me flow a lot more easily. It allows me to, as you said, Ayanla says, to fill my cup, and then I have something available for others. I'm able to be a little more compassionate. I'm able to be a little more understanding. I'm able to listen a little more closely and a little more intently when I, number one, take time to breathe, ground myself, center myself. Number two, I know who I am, and I know who I don't have to be anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then thirdly, when I'm doing what I love, when I'm engaging in what gives me life, you'll recall in the 13th chapter, I talk about going skydiving. And that was a big deal because when I was a little girl, my grandmother said, where did you get a notion like that? And then I marry a man and he tells me, no wife of mine is ever going to do any stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there came a point where I knew I had to go skydiving. And then the Spirit said, who do you think gave you the notion and the desire to do this? And so often the things that we would love to do, we allow other people's fears to minimize them in our lives. And so I had to get to a place where I had to give myself the thing I loved. And it opened a gateway for me. It became one of the most profound spiritual experiences of my life. And my husband learned to live with it.
Yes. Did he go too?
He did not.
Yeah. I'm
he absolutely did not. Matter of fact, he told me,
baby.
you go if you feel like you have to do that, but just make sure I'm not in town when you do it.
Right.
Because he was afraid I would die. But I never had such a thought. It was intriguing to me. It was an adventure. And that was something I came to realize. I am one who needs adventure.
Helen Keller said, life is either a daring adventure or it's boring.
I had done boring long enough. And boring was part of my crash. Boring, burnout, overdoing, not caring for myself. So yeah, I'm with Helen Keller on that one.
All right. The book is Learning to Be, Finding Your Center After the Bottom Falls Out. And Juanita Campbell Rasmus.
You got it.
Okay, Rasmus is the author. It's a profoundly deep book. It will help you to reflect. You just can't run through this. You have to meditate and think about it. And you're going to have all kind of breakthroughs with this book. It's going to introduce you to a part of yourself that you don't know right now. I love your voice, you and your husband both. Y'all can very easily do what I do as well as what you're doing. You know, only 15% of people go to church. I talk to the 85% and the 15%. Y'all need to be looking over here.
I'm looking.
Okay. Remember when T.D. Jakes wrote this book, Reinvent Yourself? That was the last time he referred to himself as Bishop T.D. Jakes.
Okay.
Because he reinvented himself, and he's good. He said, I can box with both hands.
Come on now. All right. All right.
Yes, you both can do it well. Well, I just love your personality, your energy, and we're going to be talking about this book and look forward to promoting it and helping you any way that we can. Anytime I can be of any service to you and your husband, please let me know, okay?
We thank you so much, and we appreciate your support in helping us to get Learning to Be out into the world.
Yes, and thank you so much for your prayers. I feel so much better. Don't stop.
Don't worry, I won't.
All right. I appreciate you. All right. Learning to Be, Finding Your Center After the Bottom has Fallen Out. Wow. That's a powerful book. And they can get it on Amazon.
And anywhere books are sold. That's right.
All right. Oh, tell them about your church.
Oh, well, we pastor a church in St. John's, downtown Houston. We've been there for this is our 29th year. We started with 9 members, and we have had probably as many as 15,000 members at one point or another. We're doing worship on Zoom. On Facebook, St. John's Downtown on Facebook. We do it on Sundays at 8 and 10. We have Bible studies on Wednesdays. We have a National Alliance of Mental Illness Support Group. We have everything you could think of. We're doing one of the key things that we do in terms of outreach, especially right now. We started work with the homeless community. We ended up building about $30 million worth of housing for formerly homeless men and women. We provide a food distribution program that's a drive-through food distribution during COVID, and we're serving about 2,000 families per week through that program. We've done COVID testing. We are hands-on. We're a lighthouse in downtown Houston in the midst of some very turbulent waters, COVID-19, social justice uprising, and political unrest. And so, yeah, we're a lighthouse, and we're a place where people are coming to find hope for their hurt and hope for a life that they really want to live.
Thank you. You were, as much as you've chosen this path, you were chosen for this path. Thank you so much for being the light, you and your husband. It's been a plum-pleasing pleasure as well as a privilege.
Likewise. Thank
you so much for praying for me.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
I encourage you all, get this book, Learning to Be. It's powerful. It's a book that will change your life. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Take care.
God bless.
God bless you.